Okay, I'm back, and unfortunately I'm by myself again. And I apologize that we're not doing videos as regularly as we were, but with COVID lockdown, the people that are normally around the table can't be, actually. We're not in a lockdown right now, but we are still in a process of everybody getting their vaccinations. That's what's going on, why you haven't seen as many videos. We really have had to kind of like, for the safety of everyone and to follow the guidelines of our community to basically chill for a while. So I'm doing this simply because I need to get something out there that is an extension of the last conversation. Anybody saw the last video, which again I had to do without the normal people around the table? There have been several comments left by a friend of mine named Andre Lieta de Silva. So if you want to know what the basis of everything I'm about to say is, it's that. Andre's problem is that he continues to express some kind of an understanding of Buddhism when he doesn't really have one. And so subsequently, when he tries to subjectively analyze the experience that he's having, which he says is that he's chanting and nothing's happened, he's really not taking into consideration what the actual teaching is, okay? I have made clear on several occasions that what is available for people on the internet, one of the reasons why I do what I do is because of the input that I got back from people saying, wow, that really was a wonderful explanation. And if you'll notice, I don't ever really freelance. I take advantage of my almost 50 years of faith and practice to sometimes inject personal interpretations that I think are contemporary and actually helpful. But for the most part, I'm following the freaking text, period, okay? And Andre's situation, he calls it the practice of daimoku or something like that. There's no such thing as the practice of daimoku. I'm going to say that for the last time. People want to jerk off and jerk around with half-truths or half-efforts. That's exactly what they'll get as a result, okay? This is very clear in the teaching. This has nothing to do with Tom, okay? I am expressing what Tom must express when one encounters this knowledge and indelibly emblazes it in their life. So again, this is going to be a long conversation. I'm going to start by reading a Gosho that actually touches on this issue of faith being mandatory, not an option. And if you're not in a position where you can accommodate that reality, you're going to find the same result in certain circumstances as Andre has expressed innumerable times here on this particular platform with YouTube channel. So the Gosho that I'm going to talk about is the 14 Slanders. It's on page 755. And I'm going to just go ahead and start reading. I'll read to you first the background, and then I'll go on from there. All right. So the background's on page 761 of Volume 1 of the Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. It says, written near the end of 1276, this letter was written to the lay priest Matsuno Rakuro Seiman. 4 in his family received letters from Nichiren Daishonin. He, his wife, son, and daughter-in-law. One of his daughters married Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro and gave birth to Nanjo Tokimitsu. Anybody that knows anything about this philosophy knows what a major disciple Nanjo Tokimitsu was. So this is actually one of his parents, a staunch supporter of the Daishonin and his disciple Nikko Shonin. It is thought that Matsuno was converted to the Daishonin's teachings through his connection with the Nanjo family. This letter explains the 14 Slanders, reciting Myelo's annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra. These Slanders are referred to originally in the simile and parable chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Asked if there is a difference in benefits derived when a sage chants the daimoku and when an ordinary person chants it, the Daishonin answers in the negative. However, there is a difference, he continues. If one chants the daimoku while acting against the intent of this sutra, he explains the intent of this sutra by referring to the 14 Slanders. The first 10 of the 14 slanders concern one's attitude and action toward the law, that is, the Buddha's teachings. The last 4 concern those toward people who believe in and practice that law. Emphasizing the importance of universality among believers, the Daishonin says, always remember that believers in the Lotus Sutra should absolutely be the last to abuse one another. The reason he gives is that all those who keep faith in the Lotus Sutra are most certainly Buddhas, and one who slanders a Buddha commits a grave offense. In other words, he warns against the last 4 of the 14 slanders, despising, hating, envying, and bearing grudges against fellow believers. The Daishonin next recounts in detail the story of the boy Snow Mountains, who offers his body to a fierce demon in order to learn a Buddhist teaching. He encourages Matsuno to make this bodhisattva's spirit a model for his own faith and practice. He further clarifies that a priest who lacks the spirit to study and practice Buddhism diligently and to strive to refute its slanderers, is no better than an animal dressed in priestly robes, a thief who has stolen the title of priest. The Daishonin concludes by instructing Matsuno how to practice his teaching as a lay believer. He encourages the lay priest to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, provide support for the priests, and in accord with the Lotus Sutra, put effort into spreading the law. Clearly, in light of the preceding paragraphs, priests here indicates not just any priest, but the Daishonin's disciples, those who are practicing in accord with the spirit elucidated in this letter. Also, I think Sandra Spring had asked for this originally to be read a long time ago, and I hadn't gotten around to it. And it's ideal for encapsulating the concept I'm going to try and convey in response to Andre's many posts, which Andre, bro, there's a potentiality that I may make you hidden at some point in time, because until you actually listen to what I'm saying, there's really no need for me to constantly have you come back and tell me how your practice isn't working, because you're not doing it the way I'm instructing it to be done, which is basically the straight out of the Go show. Okay, so this is going to explain to you that there are exceptions when chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo doesn't have an effect, which is what you're reporting. Okay, so let's go with the Go show, the 14 Slanders on page 755. See if I can make some sense out of this for you. This isn't a regular day, as you can tell by the background. I just got done receiving a gigantic freaking multi-million-dollar benefit. And so I felt like I've been saying this to myself for such a long time now. Tom, get you off your ass and read this to everybody. Sandra, I said this, I should have read this to you a long time ago. Here we go. The 14 Slanders, 755, page 755, volume 1, the writings of Nietzsche and Daishonin. I have received the string of coins, the horseload of polished rice, and the white quilted robe that you sent. Rolling fields and hills stretch out more than 100 ri to the south of this mountain. To the north stands lofty Mount Minobu, which joins the peaks of Shirane further off. Jutting sharply up to the west is a mountain called Shichimin. Snow remains on these peaks throughout the year. There is not a single dwelling other than mine in the area. My only visitors, infrequent as they are the monkeys that come swinging through the treetops. And to my regret, even they do not stay for long, but scurry back to where they came from. To the east run the surging waters of the Fuji River, which resemble the flowing sands of the desert. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinary indeed that you send letters from time to time to this place whose inaccessibility makes visitors rare. I learned that the scholar Nichigen of Nishoji Temple, upon becoming my disciple, was driven out by his own disciples and lay supporters and had to give up his land, so that now he has no place of his own. Nonetheless, he still visits me and takes care of my disciples. What devotion to the way! Nichigen is a sage. He is already unrivaled as a scholar of Buddhism. Yet he has discarded all desire for fame and fortune and become my disciple. He has lived the words in the sutra, we care nothing for our bodies or lives. To repay this debt of gratitude to the Buddha, he taught you and your fellow believers and inspired you, Matsuno, to make these sincere offerings. All this is truly amazing. The Daishonin stated that in the latter age, monks and nuns with the hearts of dogs would be as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. By this he meant that priests and nuns of that day would be attached to fame and fortune. Because they wear robes and surplices, pardon me for just a second here, get that dried up. Because they wear robes and surplices, they look like ordinary priests and nuns, but in their hearts they wield a sort of distorted views, hastening here and there among their patrons, filing them with countless lies so as to keep them away from other priests or nuns. Thus, they strive to keep their patrons to themselves and prevent other priests or nuns from coming near them, like a dog who goes to a house to be fed, but growls and springs to attack the moment another dog approaches. Each and every one of these priests and nuns is certain to fall into the evil paths. Being the scholar that he is, Nichigen must have read this passage in the sutra. His usual consideration and frequent visits to me, after he's lost everything, he's still tithing to me. His usual consideration and frequent visits to me and my disciples are deeply appreciated. In your letter, you write, since I took faith in this sutra, the lotus, I have continued to recite the 10 factors of life and the verse section of the lifespan chapter and chant the Daimoku without the slightest neglect. But how great is the difference between the blessings received when a sage chants the Daimoku and the blessings received when we chant it, she's asking as a disciple of Nichiren. To reply, one is in, that Daishonin gives an answer to that question. To reply, one is in no way superior to the other. Master and disciple are identical. The gold that a fool possesses is no different from the gold that a wise man possesses. A fire made by a fool is the same as a fire made by a wise man. However, this is the kicker, listen carefully. However, there is a difference if one chants the Daimoku while acting against the intent of the sutra. There are various stages in the practice of this sutra, and various forms of slander exist accordingly. What will be slander at one stage is not going to be slander at another one because you just don't partake of it. But you may think you know what you don't know and subsequently commit slander without intending to. He says, let me say that again. There are various stages in the practice of this sutra, so you should all understand that the normal course of your behavior and practice throughout a lifetime of embracing the Gohonzon and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is not going to be the same as it was going in as it is coming out toward the end. He says, there are various stages in the practice of this sutra, and various forms of slander exist accordingly. Let me sum them up by quoting from volume 5 of the annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra. Who would that be? That would be Myolo. In defining the types of evil, the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra states briefly. So in other words, Myolo is quoting Tentai here, all right? Let me sum them up by quoting from volume 5 of the annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, Myolo, and he's quoting, here's a quote, in defining the types of evil, the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, which is attributed to Tentai, states briefly, expound among the wise and not among the foolish. Now, why would it say that? It would say that because people that are foolish will have a tendency to slander the law and take on karma that they have no concept of the fact of what's happening when they do it. So this is to try and tell you, if you know someone's a slanderous kind of a person, or if they start to slander, try and dissipate that as quickly as possible. Do your very best to respond to them, but don't let them continue to slander. And so I'm basically saying, Andre, you're not thinking that you're slandering, but I'm going to explain to you that you have been from day one, okay, from moment one. All right. So again, the words and phrase of the Lotus Sutra states briefly, expound among the wise, but not among the foolish. People that think they know what they don't. This even has a footnote for foolish. So let's just see what they say specifically foolish is. Chapter 3 of Lotus Sutra says that one should not expound this sutra among the foolish in order to protect them from committing the evil of slandering the sutra. Okay, which inadvertently is actually what Andre is doing right now by openly, repeatedly saying, so overwhelmingly, his whole thing is about a negative trip. It's not really about inquiring anything, Andre. Right. Okay, I haven't said anything to you in over a year that you've taken to heart and executed as far as I can see. You keep telling me that you're chanting, but that's all I continue to hear. I don't hear anything about the steps of faith that I've already explained are necessary. All right, and if you want to go against the teaching, then you're not practicing the teaching, and you have no right to, think that you should get some benefit from violating the basic tenets of Buddhism. It's not going to happen, bro. And that's why I called you a person of incorrigible disbelief, because no matter what I say, your real intent is to prove this doesn't work. At least that's what comes out of your mouth, out of your life condition, out of everything I hear you say. Yes. And you say the same thing over and over and over again. So it's hard for me not to think that you don't have an agenda, bro. Okay, and I'm not being showing lack of compassion. I may look like I'm getting a little worked up here, but this has been going on for a while, and I'm going to stop it now. All right? So if you want to continue with a dialogue with me, you know how to reach me. I'm going to reference some of the dialogue that's already occurred privately between us so that everybody will understand why I'm speaking in the tone that I'm speaking in, why I'm reading what I'm reading, and what my true intent is in doing so. It really has much less to do with you than it does laying down this reality for everybody else so they'll know when they face it, because they will face it if they do the right thing. Exactly. Okay? So, he says, expound among the wise, but not among the foolish. One scholar enumerates the types of evil as follows. I will first list the evil causes and then their effects. This is all coming from Mielo quoting Tentai. There are 14 evil causes. All right, now you should understand the last 4 of those evil causes pertain to devotees of the correct teaching. They would apply to us as bodhisattvas of the earth. The first 10 are about common mortals that are doing everything they can to stay common mortals, okay, by not listening to the teaching. The greatest arrogance would be to feel that you understand the teaching when you don't have a clue about what the teaching is. That's kind of what Andre's doing. And there are 14 different types of arrogance I'm going to go into when I get done reading this Gosho. I'm going to spell all of this out, my brother. Okay, so you'll understand why I'm coming at it with the tone that I'm coming at it with. There are 14 evil causes. When you do these things, they don't create good karma and they don't create neutral karma. They create negative karma. Okay, so don't do evil things and then expect benefit or reward for that. It's not going to happen. It's not sound cause and effect kind of even thinking. All right, so there are 14 evil causes. 1, page 756 toward the middle. 1, arrogance. 2, negligence. 3, wrong views of the self. 4, shallow understanding. 5, attachment to earthly desires. 6, not understanding. 7, not believing. 8, scowling with knitted brows. 9, harboring doubts. And 10, slandering. And I'll define all of that after we get done with the Gosho. Then going on to the 4 that applies to bodhisattvas of the earth as well. Number 11, despising. 12, hating. 13, envying. And 14, bearing grudges. Continuing on page 756, first column, since these 14 slanders apply equally to priesthood and laity, so they all apply to us. It's not just about priests that are going against their precepts, all right? You must be on guard, he says to his disciple, against them. Bodhisattva, never disparaging, of old said that all people have the Buddha nature and that if they embrace the Lotus Sutra, they will never fail to attain Buddhahood. He further stated that to slight a person is to slight the Buddha himself, considering that all people have a Buddha nature. And I'm not slighting you, Andre, I'm pointing out your ignorance. Frankly speaking, you think you know what you don't know. You don't know the whole teaching. You've grabbed onto something that you call the practice of Daimoku, which is somebody made up. I don't even know what the source of that is. I've tried to show you over and over again. There is no source that is called the practice of Daimoku, unless you're getting it from the internet somewhere. I don't know the orthodoxy of that statement. It's not valid as far as I'm concerned. I don't have to deal with it as a result of that. Bodhisattva, never disparaging of old, said that all people have the Buddha nature and that if they embrace the Lotus Sutra, they will never fail to attain Buddhahood. He further stated that to slight a person is to slight the Buddha himself. Thus, his practice was to revere all people. Bodhisattva, never disparaging. If you don't know the story, look it up in the dictionary. He revered even those who did not embrace the Lotus Sutra, because they too had the Buddha nature and might someday believe in the sutra. Therefore, it is all the more natural to revere those priests and lay people who do embrace the sutra. The fourth volume of the Lotus Sutra states, if there were a person who spoke only one word to curse the lay persons or monks or nuns who uphold and preach the Lotus Sutra, then his offense would be even greater than that of cursing Shakyamuni Buddha to his face for the space of a kalpa. Now let me explain that again as you lay down that negativity for everybody to soak up and be reinforced. Chanting doesn't work for everybody, Andre. That's what you keep trying to say, but you're not even doing what the teaching says you got to do for that to be the case. And then you're complaining that it's not working, which is guaranteed right here it will not. And then you're opening your mouth and you're making it 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times worse for your karma in doing so. And you want benefits from chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? Dude, I want what you're smoking. I don't know where you're coming up with that from. You're making it up. It's not in the teaching. And I'm here to clarify it. It's not in the teaching. He says again, if there were a person who spoke only one word to curse the lay persons or monks or nuns who uphold and preach the Lotus Sutra, then his offense would be even greater than that of cursing Shakyamuni Buddha to his face for the space of a kalpa. The Lotus Sutra also states, if anyone sees a person who accepts and upholds this sutra and it tries to expose the faults or evils of that person, whether what he speaks is true or not, he will in his present existence be afflicted with white leprosy. So if I'm wrong, dude, I'm going to get white leprosy. Okay? Take these teachings to heart. And always remember that believers in the Lotus Sutra should absolutely be the last to abuse one another. Now, it may sound like I'm abusing Andre in the way I'm speaking to him, but I'm not, because he's not actually a believer at this point in time. He's already expressed the things that cuts him off from the benefit of faith. All right? So take these teachings to heart. And always remember that believers in the Lotus Sutra should absolutely be the last to abuse one another. All those who keep faith in the Lotus Sutra are most certainly Buddhas. Who keep faith in the Lotus Sutra are most certainly Buddhas. And one who slanders a Buddha commits a grave offense. So we shouldn't be slandering each other. I'm not slandering Andre right now. I'm trying to express to him why the opinion he's holding on to so tightly and reiterating and reiterating and reiterating is not based on the teaching of Nichiren Daishonin. It's wherever you got this, bro, it's an interpretation of somebody else's. Okay? So, continuing on page 756. When one chants the Daimoku, bearing in mind that there are no distinctions among those who embrace the Lotus Sutra, then the blessings one gains will be equal to those of Shakyamuni Buddha. A commentary states, both the beings and the environment of the Avicii hell exist entirely within the life of the highest sage, Buddha. And what is more, the life and the environment of Vairocana Buddha, which is the eternal Buddha, historically, never transcend the lives. The original teacher never transcends the lives of the common mortals, okay, which is the equality that the orally transmitted teachings makes very clear as far as Nichiren's and his teaching is concerned. You can surmise the significance of the 14 Slanders in light of the above quotations. That you have asked me about Buddhism shows that you are sincerely concerned about your next life. The Lotus Sutra states, a person capable of listening to this law, such a person is likewise rare. Unless the Buddha's true envoy appears in this world, Unless the Buddha's true envoy appears in this world, who is there that can expound this sutra in exact accord with the Buddha's intent? Moreover, it would appear that there are very few who ask about the meaning of the sutra in an effort to resolve their doubts and thus believe in it wholeheartedly. No matter how humble a person may be, if his wisdom is the least bit greater than yours, you should ask him about the meaning of the sutra. But the people in this evil age are so arrogant, prejudiced, and attached to fame and profit that they are afraid that, should they become the disciple of a humble person or try to learn something from him, they will be looked down upon by others. They never rid themselves of this wrong attitude. And of course, he's kind of referring to himself there. But it could be anybody that actually has a superior understanding and you're looking at where they live or what kind of car they drive or some bullshit about that to judge the validity of their understanding and faith. You're way out in left field. If any of you ever do that, that means nothing. Zero. Some of us will manifest fortune that's very obvious, and some of us will manifest fortune only they can be aware of. All right? Nonetheless, that fortune becomes manifest and it's real. Okay? So they never rid themselves of the wrong attitude he's talking about. These ikchantikas, actually, these people of incorrigible disbelief that will not embrace the teaching as it's expressed, and then they add their own PSs to it, their own supposition, their own explanations, their own expectations. Okay? When it doesn't say that, all right? They never rid themselves of this wrong attitude, so they seem to be destined for the evil past. They seem to be, because it's dependent upon them. They can change this attitude in a moment. Every bit of karma that they've created by having these incorrect views can be eradicated in a moment. But it takes the correct attitude for that causality to occur. He says, okay, the teacher of the law chapter, middle of page 757, first column. Pardon me. Does this sound okay? Okay. It's kind of difficult when there's nobody around the table. The teacher of the law chapter says, if you make offerings to the priest who preaches the Lotus Sutra, and hear its teachings for even a moment, then you will experience joy, because you can gain even greater benefits than one who offers immeasurable treasures to the Buddha for the space of 80 million kalpas. So that feeling in your heart is worth more than anything else you could chant for and get. Understand, that's what you're going for. That's your Buddhahood. Even an ignorant person can obtain blessings by serving someone who expounds the Lotus Sutra. Even if you don't know, when ignorance doesn't mean that you're evil. Ignorant means you're not informed. You have misunderstandings of what is correct and what isn't. All right? So he's saying even people that don't know the truth can obtain blessings by serving someone who knows the truth. No matter if he is a demon or an animal, if someone proclaims, and I just now added words, let me go back. Even an ignorant person can obtain blessings by serving someone who expounds the Lotus Sutra. No matter if he is a demon or an animal, if someone proclaims even a single verse or phrase of the Lotus Sutra, you must respect him as you would the Buddha. This is what the sutra means when it says you should rise and greet him from afar, showing him the same respect you would a Buddha. You should respect one another, as Shakyamuni and many treasures did at the ceremony in the Treasure Tower chapter. So there he qualifies. Ain't nobody better than anybody else. Okay? But that's predicated on you having the ultimate wisdom of the truth, that there's no difference between you and everybody else, or your nine-world mind is going to drag you into bullshit understanding that's not reflective of what I just said. All right? The Prisamibo may be lowly, but since he can explain even a little about the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, you should respect him as you would the Buddha and ask him about the teachings. Rely on the law and not upon persons should be your guideline. Long, long ago, there was a young man who lived in the Snow Mountains and was called the Boy Snow Mountains. He gathered ferns and nuts to keep himself alive, made garments of deerskin to clothe his body, and quietly practiced the way. As he observed the world with care and attention, the boy came to understand that nothing is permanent and everything changes, and that all that is born is destined to die. This weary world is as fleeting as a flash of lightning, as the morning dew that vanishes in the sun, as a lamp easily blown out by the wind, or as the fragile leaves of plantain that are so easily broken. No one can escape this transience. In the end, all must take the journey to the Yellow Springs, the land of darkness. All must die. All must perish from this world. All things in this world itself, everything has a cycle of life and reemergence. When we imagine, that's from me. When we imagine the trip to the other world, we sense utter darkness. There is no light from the sun, the moon, or the stars, not even so much as fire to light a torch. And along that dark road, there is no one to keep you company. When one is in the Sahe world, one is surrounded by parents and relatives, brothers and sisters, wife and children and retainers. Fathers may show lofty compassion and mothers profound loving sympathy. Husband and wife may be as faithful as two shrimps of the sea who vow to share the same hole and never to part throughout life. Yet, though they push their pillows side by side and sport together, make love, and sport together under quilts embroidered with mandarin ducks, they can never be together on that journey to the land of darkness. As you travel alone in complete darkness, who will come to encourage you? Though old and young alike dwell in the realm of uncertainty, it is part of the natural order for the elderly to die first and the young to remain a while. Thus, even as we grieve, we can find some cause for consolation. Sometimes, however, it is the old who remain and the young who die first. No one feels more bitter resentment than a young child who dies before its parents. No one despairs more deeply than parents who see their child precede them in death. People live in this fleeting world where all is uncertainty and impermanence. Yet day and night they think only of how much wealth they can amass in this life. From dawn to dusk, they concentrate on worldly affairs and never revere the Buddha, nor take faith in the law, which both in truth are inside you. They're in your life. The Buddha isn't outside your life. The law isn't outside your life. The person and the law are one. They ignore Buddhist, I added that, let me go again. From dawn to dusk, they concentrate on worldly affairs and neither revere the Buddha nor take faith in the law. Take faith in the law. They ignore Buddhist practice and lack wisdom, idling their days away. And when they die and are brought before the court of Yama, the Lord of Hell, what can they carry as provisions on the long journey through the threefold world? What can they use as a boat or a raft to ferry themselves across the sea of suffering, of the sea of sufferings of birth and death, to the land of actual reward, or the Buddha land of tranquil light? When one is deluded, it is as if one were dreaming. And when one is enlightened, it is as if one had awakened. Thinking in this way, the Boy Snow Mountains resolved to awake from the dream of the transient world, the 9 realms, and to seek the reality of enlightenment, the 10th world. Okay, I added to clarify what he's talking about there, so let me go back. Thinking in this way, the Boy Snow, okay, so when one is deluded, it is as if one were dreaming. And when one is enlightened, it is as if one had been awakened. Thinking in this way, and when one is enlightened, it is as if one had awakened. Thinking in this way, the Boy Snow Mountains resolve to awake from the dream of the transient world and to seek the reality of enlightenment. So he secluded himself in the mountains and devoted himself to deep meditation, sweeping away the dust of delusion and befuddlement in his single-minded pursuit of the Buddhist teaching. The god Chakra looked down from, this is a parable, by the way, it's a parable from the Lotus Sutra. The god Chakra looked down from heaven and observed the Boy Snow Mountains in the distance. He thought to himself, though the baby fish are many, there are few that grow up to be big fish. So this is an endeavor that not everybody's gonna succeed in. It's too difficult for most people to succeed in, frankly. There's inherent adversity that will have to be overcome and will only be overcome through faith. So if you haven't developed faith by the time you get to the end stretch of your existence, you're screwed, okay? Because you really haven't ascertained the truth that was there all along, that was really the whole purpose of you doing all the shit you did, getting all the benefits you got, going to all the meetings you went to, doing all the studying you did. It really comes down to a life condition and an understanding and a confidence, actually. Okay, so he says, again, Chakra, there's supposed to be some God looking down from heaven and observing this boy going through this contemplative process and this discipline that he's endeavoring to seek to know what is not normally or easily known. He thought to himself, though the baby fish are many, there are few that grow up to be big fish. This kid has some potential, he says to himself. Though the flowers of the mango tree are many, there are few that turn into fruit. In like manner, there are many people who set their hearts on enlightenment, but only a few who continue their practice and in fact attain the true way. Only a few, Andre. The aspiration for enlightenment is common mortal, the aspiration for enlightenment in common mortals is often hindered by evil influences and easily swayed by circumstances. So I know a lot of people have written to me and I don't hear from them anymore. And I know they're being swayed by circumstances. And all I can do is pray that they overcome whatever they're facing, that I hear from them again. But when I don't hear from people, I don't go, I wonder why I haven't heard from them. I know freaking really well why I haven't heard from them. So everybody go after it, go for it. Don't ever give up. The aspiration for enlightenment in common mortals is often hindered by evil influences and is easily swayed by circumstances. That's all of us, guys. Though many warriors don armor, few go without fear into battle. Let me go test this young man's resolve, Chakra says to himself. So saying, Chakra disguised himself as a demon and appeared at the boy's side. At that time, the Buddha had not yet made his appearance in the world, because Boy Snow Mountains is actually Shakyamuni in a previous lifetime. The story I'm telling you about is a story that Shakyamuni relates as one of his previous existences and what got him there. Okay, that's why we listen to this story. The Boy Snow Mountains is a Buddha. At that time, the Buddha had not yet made his appearance in the world. And although the Boy Snow Mountains had sought everywhere for the scriptures of the great vehicle, the equivalents of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, as I'm speaking to you, he had been unable to learn anything of them. Just then, he heard a faint voice saying, "Pardon me. This is cool shit. I gotta not be all choked up." This is the demon speaking from the brush. "All is changeable. Nothing is constant. This is the law of birth and death." The young man looked all around in amazement, but there was no one in sight except a demon standing nearby. In appearance, it was fierce and horrible. The hairs on its head were like flames, and the teeth in its mouth like swords, and its eyes were fixed on the boy in a furious glare. When the boy saw this, he was not frightened in the least. He was so overjoyed at the opportunity to hear something of the Buddha's teaching that he did not even question it. He was like a calf separated from its mother that hears the faint sound of her lowing. Who spoke that verse? There must be more, he thought. And once more he searched all around, but still there was no one to be seen. He wondered if it could have been the demon who recited the verse. But on second thought, that seemed impossible, since the demon must have been born a demon in retribution for some past evil act. The verse was certainly a teaching of the Buddha, and he was sure it could never have come from the mouth of a lowly demon. But as there was no one else about, he asked of the demon, "Was it you who preached that verse?" "Don't speak to me," replied the demon. I've had nothing to eat for days. I'm starved, exhausted, and almost out of my mind. I have uttered some sort of nonsense, but in my dazed condition, I don't even know what it was. So the demon answered again, because I chopped it up a little bit. "Don't speak to me," replied the demon. "I've had nothing to eat for days. I'm starved, exhausted, and almost out of my mind. I may have uttered some sort of nonsense, but in my dazed condition, I don't even know what it was. For me to hear only the first half of that verse," said the boy, "is like seeing only half the moon or obtaining half a jewel. It must have been you who spoke. So I beg you to teach me the remaining half." The demon replied sarcastically. See, even chakra can be sarcastic. The demon replied sarcastically, "You are already enlightened, so you should feel no resentment even if you don't hear the rest of the verse. I'm dying of starvation, and I haven't the strength to speak. Say no more to me." And so the Boy Snow Mountains comes back and says, "Could you teach me if you had something to eat?" asked the boy. "If I had something to eat, I might be able to," said the demon. Elated, the boy said, "Well then, what kind of food would you like? But the demon replied, "Ask no more. You will certainly be horrified when you hear what I eat. Besides, you would never be able to provide it." Yet the boy Snow Mountains was insistent. "If you will just tell me what you want, I will try to find it for you." The demon answered, "I eat only the tender flesh of humans and drink only their warm blood. I fly through the air far and wide in search of food, but people are protected by the Buddhas and gods, so that even though I want to kill them, I cannot. I can only kill and eat those whom the Buddhas and gods have forsaken." Hearing this, the boy decided to give his own body for the sake of the law so that he could hear the entire verse. He said, "Your food is right here," he said. "You need look no further. Since I am still alive, my flesh is warm, and since my flesh is warm, so is my blood. Therefore, I ask you to teach me the rest of the verse, and in exchange, I will offer you my body." Then the demon grew furious and demanded, "Who could believe your words after I've taught you the rest of the verse? Who can I call on as a witness to make you keep your promise?" The boy replied, "This body of mine is mortal. I'm going to die anyhow. But if I give you my," I added that, this body of mine is mortal. But if I give you my life for the law, casting away this vile body that would otherwise die in vain, in the next life I will certainly attain enlightenment and become a Buddha. I will receive a pure and wonderful body. It will be like throwing away a piece of crockery and receiving a precious vessel in exchange. I call upon Brahma and Chakra, the four heavenly kings, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions to be my witness. I could not possibly deceive you in their presence." Don't forget, this is Chakra talking to him. The demon, somewhat mollified, said, "If what you say is true, I will teach you the rest of the verse." The boy Snow Mountains was overjoyed and removed his deerskin garment, spread it out for the demon to sit upon while he preached. Then the boy knelt, bowed his head to the ground, and placed his palms together in reverence, saying, "All I ask is that you teach me the rest of the verse." Thus he offered his heartfelt respect to the demon. The demon, seating himself on the deerskin, then recited these words: "Extinguishing the cycle of birth and death, one enters the joy of nirvana." The moment he heard this, that's the 9th consciousness, by the way. The moment he heard this, the boy was filled with joy, and his reverence for the verse was boundless. Resolving to remember it in his next life, he repeated it over and over again and etched it deep in his heart. He pondered, thinking to himself, "I rejoice that this verse, although it came from a demon, is no different from the teaching of the Buddha. But at the same time, I lament that I alone have heard it, and I am unable to transmit it to others." Thereupon he inscribed the stanza on stones, cliff faces, and the trees along the road, and he prayed that those who might later pass by would see it, understand its meaning, and finally enter the true way. This done, he climbed a tall tree and threw himself down before the demon. But before he had reached the ground, the demon quickly resumed his original form as Chakra, caught the boy, and gently placed him on a level spot. Bowing before him reverently, the god said, "In order to test you, I held back the thus come one sacred teaching for a time, causing anguish in the heart of a bodhisattva. I hope you will forgive my fault and save me without failing in my next life." Then all the heavenly beings gathered round, because he's talking to a Buddha and he's only a freaking god. That's why he said what he just said. Chakra is not above Buddha. Okay? That's the whole point. Then all of the heavenly beings, let me read it again. It's top of page 760. But before he had reached the ground, the demon quickly resumed his original form of Chakra, caught the boy, and gently placed him on a level spot. Bowing before him reverently, the god said, In order to test you, I held back the thus come one's sacred teaching for a time, causing anguish in the heart of a bodhisattva, you. I hope you will forgive my fault and save me without fail in my next life. Then all the heavenly beings gathered around to praise the boy Snow Mountains, who was a previous lifetime of Shakyamuni. Remember that. Saying, excellent, excellent. I can't even read. Pardon me. I am the boy Snow Mountains, guys, by the way. I told Shirley that it wasn't a joke. And when I say that, we're all boy Snow Mountains. Excellent, excellent. He is truly a bodhisattva. By casting away his body to listen to half a verse, the bodhisattva was able to eradicate offenses calling for 12 kalpas of the sufferings of birth and death and attain enlightenment. His story is referred to in the Nirvana Sutra. Excuse me, it's from the Perfect Teaching. It's Nirvana, not Lotus. But the point here is, I don't know if you're catching this. I have to make this clarification. Okay, so Chakra has now he's come back to his original appearance, and he's saying, dude, I dissed you a little bit, and I'm really sorry for it, and cut me some slack and help me find the way myself, become the Buddha like you are. You're definitely a bodhisattva on the path. All right? Then, after that fact, after this test, all of the heavenly beings gathered around to praise the boy Snow Mountain, saying, excellent, excellent, he is truly a bodhisattva. By casting away his body to listen to a half a verse, the bodhisattva was able to eradicate offenses calling for 12 kalpas of the sufferings of birth and death and attain enlightenment. The story is referred to in the Nirvana Sutra. So, once again, Andre, so why did that go down in that story? What is the basis of that teaching that's being conveyed to the Daishonin in his letter to Matsumo or whatever, the 14 Slanders? It's faith. Faith is what allowed him to eradicate in a single lifetime what would have otherwise taken many, many, many kalpas of lifetimes to eradicate. That's why we have to take on faith, because we do the same thing in a single lifetime. We manifest not just the 9th world of Bodhisattva, we manifest the 10th world of Buddhahood. Okay? And we are charged with the mission to lead others to that world of Buddhahood in a single lifetime. We don't lay it down like Shakyamuni and say some freaking day, way down the road, you'll catch up to what I'm saying. We're there to basically give them the benefit that you think if Snow Mountains, the boy Snow Mountains, had not already been exemplary in his conduct, Chakra wouldn't have shown up. Okay, Chakra wouldn't have presented this final challenge that's now got everybody going, God damn, you're a Buddha. Okay, it's only because of that test and having the correct attitude of faith. The correct attitude of faith is what enables people to become Buddhas in their present form. This is that teaching. And actually, this is Nichiren sharing that teaching and its correct understanding with his disciple Matsuno, who's going to become a lay priest. All right? So, okay. Let me start that paragraph, middle of page 760. We're almost finished. In the past, the boy Snow Mountains was willing to give his life to hear but half a verse. How much more thankful should we be to hear a chapter or even a volume of the Lotus Sutra? This is Nichiren talking to Matsuno. This is a continuation. We're done with the story. Now we're finishing the letter that he wrote to him on the 14 Slanders. In the past, the boy Snow Mountains, this is Nichiren talking. In the past, the boy Snow Mountains was willing to give his life to hear but a half a verse. How much more thankful should we be to hear a chapter or even a volume of the Lotus Sutra? How can we ever repay such a blessing? Indeed, if you care about your next life, you should make this bodhisattva your example, which is what I did when I heard this parable. Even though you may be too poor to offer anything of value, if the opportunity should arise to give up your life to acquire the law of the Buddha, you should offer your life in order to pursue the law without hesitation. I added without hesitation because that should be your reaction. And it shall be, because there will be others leading you to that. This body of ours in the end will become nothing more than the soil of the hills and fields. We're going to rot away to nothing. Therefore, it is useless to begrudge your life. That's the whole point. For though you may wish to, you cannot cling to it forever. Even people who live a long time rarely live beyond the age of 100, and all the events of a lifetime are like the dream one dreams in a brief nap. Though a person may have been fortunate enough to have been born as a human being and may have even entered the priesthood, if he fails to study the Buddha's teachings and to refute its slanderers, which is why I wrote what I wrote. Every time I wrote it, I was refuting what I saw as your slander. I've now validated that what you were saying was slander. I don't have to prove to you it was slander. I'm showing you the teaching that says it was slander. That's why I'm now reading this and why I wrote everything that I'm going to read to everybody that's already been sent to you, Andre. And I'm trying to stop your slander. And if I have to stop participating and communicating with you to keep you from slandering to me and thereby slandering to everybody else that reads what I'm talking about, then I'll do that, bro. And it won't be personal. It will be merciful. Okay, so understand that. I'm going to go back to that. 760, first column, last paragraph. This body of ours in the end will become nothing more than the soil of the hills and fields. Therefore, it is useless to begrudge your life, for though you may wish to, you cannot cling to it forever. Even people who live a long time rarely live beyond the age of 100. And all the events of a lifetime are like the dream one dreams in a brief nap. Though a person may have been fortunate enough to have been born as a human being and may have even entered the priesthood, if he fails to study the Buddha's teachings and to refute its slanderers, but simply spends his time in idleness and chatter, bullshitting, enjoying his occupation, then he is no better than an animal dressed in priestly robes. If he's not trying to save people from the suffering of their slander, which extends their lives in the 9 worlds, and help introduce them to the 10th world, he is committing slander himself. He may call himself a priest and earn his livelihood as such, but in no way does he deserve to be regarded as a true priest. That's how strict Nichiren is in saying this. I'm just a layperson, dude. All right? Even priests, he's saying. He is nothing but a thief who has stolen the title of priest. How shameful and frightening. So Nichiren Daishonin is pretty strict about this shit. I didn't say everything I said on a lark. It's because I know what the Gosho says thoroughly, and you don't. In the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, there is a passage that reads, "We care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way." Another passage from the essential teaching reads, "Not hesitating even if it costs them their lives." The Nirvana Sutra states, "One's body is insignificant while the law is supreme. One should give one's life in order to propagate the law." Thus, both the theoretical and the essential teachings of the Lotus Sutra, as well as the Nirvana Sutra, they all encompass, they all were qualified by Tentai as part of the perfect teaching. Lotus and Nirvana go together. All indicate that one should give one's life. So the perfect teaching specifically states one should give one's life to spread the law. It is a grave offense to go against these admonitions. It is a grave offense to go against these admonitions. And though invisible to the eye, because you don't see yourself when you're making that karma, you don't see the effect necessarily, that's your misfortune. That's the degree of your slander. You know, to put your fingers into a burning flame, that's very slight slander, karmic retribution, because you immediately know to pull your hand back from the pain. It's immediate. I don't want to do that. When you create this kind of karma, bro, it's going to sneak up on you down the road. When you don't know for sure if you've made the cause to hear somebody tell you about the practice of daimoku that led you to the teachings of the perfect teaching for the latter day of the law, the Buddhism of sowing of Nichiren. So he says, again, thus both the theoretical and essential teachings of the Lotus Sutra as well as the Nirvana Sutra all indicate that one should give one's life to spread the law. It is a grave offense to go against these admonitions, and though invisible to the eye, the error piles up until it sends one plummeting to hell. It is like heat or cold, which has no shape or form that the eye can see. Yet in winter, the cold comes to attack the trees and grasses, humans and beasts. And in the summer, the heat comes to torment people and animals. As a lay believer, the important thing for you is to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo single-mindedly and to provide support for the priest. Single-mindedly with faith, according to my teaching of it, because it didn't precede me, Nichiren is saying. As a lay believer, the important thing for you as my disciple is to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo single-mindedly. Single-mindedly. Don't worry about the rest of this shit. You need to know faith first. And to provide support for the priests, the teachers. If we go by the words of the sutra, you should also teach the sutra to the best of your ability. Even though you might say, but I'm not a priest. That's called, have you ever heard of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? It's as simple as that. That's hearing the name and the words of the truth. When you do that, you do more than any priest could ever do in the absence of the perfect teaching. When the world makes you feel downcast, you should chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, remembering that although the sufferings of this life are painful, those in the next life could be much worse. And when you are happy, you should remember that your happiness in this life is nothing but a dream within a dream, and that the only true happiness is that found in the Pure Land of Eagle Peak. And with that thought in mind, chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And when he's talking about, and the only true happiness is that found in the Pure Land of Eagle Peak, he's talking about the ninth consciousness where all the Buddhas go when they enter non-substantiality. He's saying, and with that thought in mind, with that aspiration in mind, with the concept of, I can't see myself as a Buddha, but I am a bodhisattva of the earth. I am a disciple of the original teacher Nichiren. With that thought in mind, they chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's how we should look into the Gohonzon when we're chanting Daimoku. Not, please help me out there. Help manifest my original state, that 10th world that I share with you, Master, that you led me to, which I'm in a process of assimilating over the time it takes to go from the 9 worlds to the 10th. And it don't happen in a year or two. Okay? The end on page 761. That Daishonin finishes by saying, continue your practice without backsliding, which means you can't really quit, Andre, until the final moment of your life. And when that time comes, behold, that last moment of your life, when you climb the mountain of perfect enlightenment and gaze around you in all directions, then to your amazement you will see that the entire realm of the phenomena is the land of tranquil light. The ground will be of lapis lazuli, and the 8 paths will be set apart by golden robes. The 4 kinds of flowers will fall from the heavens, and music will resound in the air. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will be present in complete joy, caressed by the breezes of eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. The time is fast approaching when we, too, will count ourselves. He's saying to Matsuno, you and me, we're old guys already. The time is fast approaching when we too will count ourselves among their number. But if we are weak in faith, we will never reach that wonderful place. If you still have questions, I am waiting to hear them. Andre, ditto, bro, ditto. Respectfully, Nietzsche, in the 9th day of the 12th month in the 12th year of Kenji, 1276. Cyclical sign, Henoine. Reply to Matsuno. And I'm going to end this section here, and then I'm going to go to a bunch of dictionary definitions and my response and replies to Andre with his very valid position, but he's setting himself up for being in this position that he's in, asking the questions he's asking. He's not listening to what I'm saying, and that's not my problem. That's his. And so we'll continue, and I'll explain the rest of this when we do our next video, which will be very shortly. Thank you. Bye-bye.